I've been wanting to make this video for some time now. A while back I had a viewer ask about the size of my backyard and wanted to see an overall view. That question got me thinking about how many square feet I'm actually using for my fruit trees, so I decided to make this video. I wanted to measure out all the planting areas and figure out how many square feet is being used for the amount of trees I have growing. My backyard measures about 60 feet from the side of the fence that is over there towards the back, right about there, to this one here where we have this side. So that's a total of 60 feet between those two fences. And from this wall here to the back fence is about 30 feet. The majority of the space is taken up by the section of small grass and a patio area. The patio area on the other side, it measures about 22 feet by 21 feet. So between those two sections, the small grass section and the patio, they take up the majority of the space back here. This section of grass originally came up towards the patio and towards the back. It went all the way to close to where the fence, the raised bed section is. And on this other side, it went to a small planting area that was it was about 2.5 feet wide. It was just a small planting section that separated the grass from the back fence. Here's a short video that would give you an idea of what it looked like before. In the small trench you see here, there used to be a brick border that separated the grass section from the small planting area that I was talking about. It ran all along the side and up through the patio area, up to the raised bed section in the back. In the patio area, I also cut out a small section of the patio itself in order to widen the planting area. It was quite a bit of work digging out all the brick, but I wanted to widen the planter area here so that I could fit a few more trees. Here's what all that brick that was removed looked like. Before I start showing you what the planting areas look like now, I should talk about the planting. When I started this project, I decided I wanted to plant as many fruit trees as I could possibly fit in my yard while still keeping a small section of grass and my patio area. I began by doing some research in order to find out what trees and plants would do well in my zone. I knew that citrus would not be a problem, but I wasn't too sure about tropical vines, berries, and a few others. My thought was that I would like to create a food forest where I could, at any time, given time, go out to my backyard and pick something that was in season, or at least grow enough of some of the fruit and be able to can it for the times when fruit production was lacking. I began watching YouTube videos, running Google searches, and talking with nursery workers in order to get an idea of what type of trees I could grow in my area. And I made a list, and that list just kept getting bigger and bigger. I began to purchase a few trees at a time. My initial thought was to keep my fruit trees in containers. Given the limited space I wanted to dedicate for planting while still keeping my patio and grass area, I thought keeping the majority of the trees in pots was the best option. I quickly realized that container growing might not be the best option. The trees did well growing in containers, but they were taking up a lot of space in my patio area, and the list just kept getting bigger and bigger. I began to think that I would have to start cutting down on my list. That is until I came across some videos by Tom Spellman from Dave Wilson's nursery. In the video, he talked about high density planting and showed how it was possible to plant several trees in a relatively small space. The more research I did on this planting technique, I began to believe that it would be possible to keep my list intact. I started by drawing up a sketch of my backyard. I marked areas for planting and began to measure out each section. I took my list and started plugging in the trees and discovered that by utilizing high density planting, it would be possible to plant the majority of the trees in the ground. To give you a better idea of what I'm talking about, here's a picture of the diagram I came up with. This was a simple diagram, but it gave me a really good idea on how to plan out my backyard. The measurements you see on here are fairly accurate. By measuring out the planting sections, I was able to determine how many trees could be planted in each section. For instance, if you look at the top section, you'll see an area marked out as a espalier area and a high density planting area. Based off information I found on the Tom Spellman videos, I saw that it was possible to plant trees at around 2 feet apart or close to that. Using those measurements, I started to plug in the trees that I intended to grow. At this point, I'd also like to mention that the types of trees planted in each section were picked according to specific needs, such as sun exposure, and are they candidates for espalier growth, are they cold sensitive, wind exposure. All of these factors were taken into consideration in order to determine the proper plant placement. It's important to know your microclimate before starting a project like this. You need to know the trees' growing requirements and ensure you're planting them in a manner that meets the requirements they need as much as possible. If you look at the espalier section, most of the trees along that area are citrus, which do well planted in that manner, and they do best in full sun. The back section gets most of the sun in my yard, and all the trees planted along that section are trees that will do best in full sun. And this section over here along the fence is a microclimate area. This area gets a little less sun, but during the winter months it's not as cold as the other areas, so this would be a good place to plant some tropical fruit trees. Okay, so now I'd like to walk through the yard and show you each section. I have my notes, so I'll start here with my Starfruit trees. There are a total of 9 trees planted in this section. The first group here are 3 peach trees. In this next group, there are 2 nectarines and 1 nectarplum, which is a cross between a nectarine and a plum. In this last section, there are 2 apricot trees and an apium, which is a cross between a apricot and a plum. From the end of the patio to this border is 6.5 feet. And from the end of the sidewalk to the raised bed area measures about 16 feet. I'm not counting that raised bed area in the back along the fence for now. I'll get to that section in a bit and give you the measurements. So now back to this area. There's a total of 109 square feet with a total of 9 trees growing. Okay, now on to this section. I have a fig tree, these 2 cherry trees, this red mombin. This is a yellow mombin that died on me, and I intend on planting another fruit tree in this section, so I'll count these as 2 trees in this section. And over in this section, there are a total of 3 fig trees. This section from where the container grown fig is to where these figs are here measures about 18 feet. And from the border to the raised bed section is about 65 inches wide, which comes to 97.5 square feet for a total of 8 trees. This next section, I'll measure from the end of the sidewalk to about here, which comes out to 14 feet. And the width from the raised bed area to this border is about 64 inches, which comes out to about almost 75 feet, or square feet, 74.7 square feet to be exact. I'm still working on this section and I haven't finished planting all the trees that I intend to put here, like this Loquat. It'll be planted here, and next to it I intend to purchase the Lungan, so I'll be planting that next to the Loquat. This strawberry tree will be planted here, and there are 2 lychee trees which have already been planted, so that brings a total of 5 trees for 74.7 square feet. Next is this raised bed area over here. It measures 14 feet in length and 4 feet wide, which comes to about 56 square feet. I haven't planted any trees in this section, but I have a pretty good idea of the number of trees I intend to put here. Fairly certain this Barbados acerola cherry tree will be planted here in this corner. There's going to be an additional 4 trees planted here. This plum tree here on the end is going to be transplanted. I haven't been able to get this tree to fruit, so I'll be taking it out and placing some other fruit tree here. So for this section, it's a total of 56 square feet for a total of 5 trees. Next, I'll measure out this area from here where these blue Java bananas are planted to the end of the raised bed section, all the way down to where that red flag at the end is. The section measures 44.5 feet in length and 56 inches wide, for a total of 200.3 square feet. So here in this area, I intend to transplant these bananas after the mother plant produces its fruit. I eventually plan on putting a fruit tree here, maybe one of my avocados. Still not sure, but we'll count this section as having 1 tree here. Next to it are 2 grapefruit trees, and here is a mandarin and a moral blood orange. Then I have a caracara orange and a eureka lemon. Then there are 2 pink Barbie guavas in this section. These trees along this section are intended for espalier growth. Continuing to this section here next to the guavas, the trees planted in this area are planted utilizing the high density 3-in-1 hole technique. Here I have a Pitomba in the front, an ice cream bean tree in the back left. By the way, this tree really has taken off. I've already pruned it a couple of times and it looks like I'll have to prune it back again. It's starting to grow over into the Grumichama, which is on the right back. Next to this group is a group of mangoes. There are 3 different varieties. And then the last group there are 3 persimmons, all different varieties as well. By the way, if you search my channel, you'll find videos on all trees planted along this section, as well as nearly all the other fruit trees I have growing in my backyard. I don't want to get into too much detail about these trees in this video, but you can find specific information on the other videos, like how they were planted, the different types of varieties I have growing, and fruit production. Lots of different information on the majority of the trees I have growing. So in this section, there's a total of 200.3 square feet, and there are 18 fruit trees growing in this area. This next section here along this fence line from about here all the way down to the end of the fence measures 67.5 feet in length, and the width is about 30 inches, for a total of 168.8 square feet. Starting here on the end is my apple tree. I intend on purchasing another apple tree, and we'll be planting it here next to this one in this section. So there'll be a total of 2 trees in this area here. Next to the apples are my pear trees. And then moving on to this other section here are 3 of my papayas. And the rest of the sections have not been planted, but I intend on moving my banana plants, which consist of 3 different varieties, all the way down to the end. So I'll count that section as having 3 plants. The next sections that I'm still working on all measure the same. From this board here to this other board here is roughly 7.5 feet, and not counting the banana section, there will be an additional 5 sections in which 2 trees will be planted in each section. This is the first section that I still need to do work on. And moving down all the way, there's the other one, and moving all the way down here to the last one, the 5th one. So this section here, I'm looking at a total of 168.8 square feet with a total of 20 fruit trees. I'd also like to mention that I have another couple of small areas where I have some trees planted in the ground, but I'm not really happy with the way those are working out, so I'm not going to be counting them in this section, in this video, because those sections are going to be redone. And there's a small section in my backyard where I have 5 dragon fruit plants growing. I still need to do a little bit more work in that area as well, and I won't be counting that area in this video either. And I also have several trees and vines that I'll be keeping in containers, so these here won't be counted either. So the total square footage that I'm using to plant 65 fruit trees is 701.3 square feet. I'm still not done re-landscaping. I'm sure that number will grow. I also intend to eventually work on my front yard. However, I'm not gonna be placing nearly as many trees in front as I've done in the back. I have HOAs in my neighborhood, and while I haven't had a single problem, I don't want to have any issues, so I'll be keeping the tree planting in the front to a minimum. I really just wanted to make this video so you can see that it doesn't take a whole lot of space to grow a good variety of fruit trees. Well, that'll be it for this video. I hope you found it informative. If so, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel so you can follow along. As always, stay safe, grow your own, and thank you for watching.